have a whole semester here, right? We only have a few days. Okay, so let's talk about creating and acquiring data. So who out there, and you can unmute or put it into the chat, who out there needs to create their own data by like making their own data by maybe tracing on a map or something, or making data from a table? Okay, a few of you, all right. And then who out there might have like their own one layer, but they want to put that on a map with other cool things so it's not a boring map. Like if you just have a map with your only one layer, that's not a very exciting map. You need reference data. You need other layers to look at it. So who else is in that boat where you might need to find data from other sources or download data? Had a couple of hands there. Okay, so that's what we're going to talk about now. There are several different ways to get data onto a map. So what we're doing today is we gave you a whole bunch of layers, and those layers came from a variety of sources, from the NHD, National Hydrography Dataset, from Rocky Mountain National Park, from, where else? Rocky Mountain National Park, from NLCD, which is a National Land Cover Dataset. The elk data was a research project in Rocky Mountain National Park. DEMs, the elevation, that usually comes from the USGS. So how do you get all this data? Like, where does it come from? So data can be created by what's called digitizing, which is just tracing on screen. And we're going to do a little bit of that today. So digitizing is pretty much where you create a new layer, not a layer like what we gave you with streams already in it, but we're going to create a brand new empty layer, and then you're going to trace things into it. You can also take data from a table. We'll talk about that more on Wednesday, but you can take XY coordinates, you can take addresses and things like that and get that on a map. Remote sensing, have any of you done remote sensing with, oh my goodness, with satellite imagery? Oh, the words. Satellite imagery and classifying satellite data, a couple of you. GPS data, so you could collect data using a GPS. You can collect data just using your phone. There's apps on your phone that can see your phone's location and then record your location, and then you can take that and put it into a GIS. One person in the surveys mentioned georeferencing images. So if you have something that's been scanned, you might need to move it and get it into the right place. And so there's a whole big process for that. We were not going to cover that today because it's kind of its own little beast. But if anyone needs to know how to do that, I have some resources I can give you. So there's half of it is creating your own new data or making your own new data. And then the other half of it is using existing data. So you might be able to search around the web and find web pages from government agencies or nonprofits that have data available for download. And you go to their web page and you find the data that you need and you click the link and it downloads as a zip file and you unzip it and then you bring it into your map. So you can download data and then it's all yours and you actually have it on your own machine. Another way to use other people's existing data is from something called a web service or a map service or a web mapping service. There's all these different terms for basically the same thing. And in this type of data acquisition, the layers are actually stored in the cloud on someone's server. And then all you're doing is referencing it by the URL. So you're not downloading it. It's not sitting on your own machine. It's always sitting on the server. And if the agency updates the data and you're using the same URL, the URL will be up to date as well. And so that's kind of a great way to work with spatial data, especially if you just need background data or you don't need to do a lot with the data. That's a great way to do it because then you don't have to worry about downloading it. You don't have to worry about it taking up room on your own machine. You don't have to worry about it getting out of date because it's all on the cloud or in the cloud and it's all up to date. So we're going to look at today, we'll take a quick look at digitizing as well as downloading and using data from web services so you get an idea of how that works. Before we begin, is there anything specific, any types of data that you might need to work with or that you might want to find? Okay, if you don't have any ideas yet, that's okay. As you think of them, let me know. You can type it into the chat, or when we're searching later, you can just unmute and let me know. Before we get into this, it's really important that we mention something about coordinate systems. So we're working with all these different layers, and you might be wondering, or you might not be wondering, how do all the layers line up with each other? If I have data from the USGS and data from Rocky Mountain National Park and data that I created myself, how is it that I can bring them all into the map, one map, and they all line up with each other, even though they came from different sources? So all of our data, no matter what, is based on X, Y coordinates. So if you think about, in this bottom picture here, if you think about the globe and geography that you learned in 3rd grade, we have this idea of latitude and longitude and degrees. So Colorado or Fort Collins is located at about 40.5 degrees north of the equator, and at about 100, where are we at? 105, I had to cheat, 105 or so west of the prime meridian. And so that is one type of coordinate system, a system for measuring locations on the face of the earth. So that's called a geographic coordinate system, latitude, longitude, and it's pretty common. Most of us know about that type. So that's right here, geographic, latitude, longitude. The other type of coordinate system is called a projected coordinate system. And with a projected coordinate system, the world is actually flattened out first. And then once it's flattened out, then the coordinates and the graticules are applied to be able to measure locations. So with a projected coordinate system, there are hundreds of different ways, hundreds of different formulas and like algorithms to use to flatten out the world. Here's a little example in this black and white picture of kind of what that looks like. Imagine that you have the globe and you have a flashlight and you have a piece of paper and you're tracing the features on the earth onto this piece of paper, but that piece of paper can be a cylinder, it can be a cone, it can be flat. So there's all these different ways to flatten out the world. And as a result, there's all these different coordinates that can be used to describe the same location. So I'm going to skip ahead to the next slide. Morgan Library on campus, which I miss very much because I used to work there a lot, and now no one can go there. But Morgan Library, if you remember that great place, that one location can be described in probably hundreds of different coordinates, but here are 4 examples of XY coordinates for that one location. And so on the top, we have the coordinates of Morgan Library in the geographic coordinate system, latitude, longitude. And then down below, we have 3 other ones. One is called UTN, another one is called state plane, and yet a third called Lambert conformal conic. And these are all just different ways of flattening out the earth, and then different coordinates are applied. And so a different number, a different XY number is used to find that location. Okay, so great. This just makes it more complicated. How does the computer know that if I have a layer in this coordinate system and a layer in this coordinate system, that these coordinates are actually the same and they should be the same place? So that is this 3rd bullet right here. So as long as your layer has the coordinate system defined, then the software can do the math to basically translate the coordinate system, and that's how they can line up. But when you're creating your own data or acquiring data from other places, it's important that you understand coordinate systems so that your data lines up correctly. Sometimes data will mostly line up, but not quite. That could be an issue with something called a datum. So there's a lot to it that you should be aware of. And we're not going to get into it too much, but I just wanted to kind of get that bug in your ear about the basics of it. So when you're creating your own data, you have to decide what coordinate system you want to work in. Okay, so let's go and actually create our own new layer, and we'll go into ArcGIS Pro using these basic steps on the right here, and we will create a few new features. And we have a couple of choices. We could digitize trailheads, or we could digitize areas above tree line, maybe fragile alpine tundra. So we have a couple of choices for what we want to create. So we'll do that first, and then we'll look at how we can search a few different resources and actually find other people's data that we can use in our maps. So let's hop back into ArcGIS Pro. And I'll zoom out a little bit. So here we are. I'm going to turn off my streams because it's kind of messy. All right, so we have choices. We could make a point layer of trailheads, or we could make a polygon layer of alpine areas. You can do whichever one you would like. Just whichever one you think might be more pertinent to you. So to do this, we're going to need to get a few things set up first. One is we're going to need to turn on an imagery base map, which we looked at before, and I turned it off. So let's turn that back on. If you remember, we did that from the map tab. So let's go to the map tab over here. And then we're going to go to base map. And the drop down for the base map has all these different options. And I think the best one will be imagery hybrid. Okay, I need water. So what we'll do is I'll get you started, and I'll give you a few minutes to keep working on your own, and we'll take a little break as well. And then we'll meet up after the break. So if you want to make trailheads, what type of layer do you think you'll be making? Point, line, or polygon?
Line.
Maybe.
Point.
Point, maybe. Or polygon. It depends on how you want to define it and what scale you're working at. If I was going to make a trailhead layer to be viewed at the whole map, at the whole park, I might want points. But if I was going to be zoomed in, then I might want line or polygon, maybe like the parking lot. Maybe the parking lot could be a polygon. So it kind of depends on how you want to do it. And then alpine areas, and by that I mean, I'm going to zoom in here. Alpine areas would be areas above tree line, which are kind of vast. So that one might be hard. But see how it goes, obviously from trees to no trees. So this would be an alpine area. So we could digitize some of those. So in whichever one you want to do, basic steps will be this, and they are on the slide. So we are going to go to the catalog pane. We're going to right click on the folder or location that we want to create the new layer in. So we could click on the folder and make a new shapefile, or we could click on that geodatabase and make a new feature class. Depends on, it doesn't, either one, it doesn't matter. And then we're going to fill out the panel. When you create a new layer, you have to say, do you want it to be point, line, or polygon? What do you want it to be called? What fields do you want in the table? And what coordinate system should it have? So you're going to need to fill in 4 pieces of information. Then after you make it, then step 3 is to zoom in to where you want to edit, and step 4 is to actually do the editing. So we're going to do steps 1 to 4 right now. So I'm going to go to my geodatabase. This is the container for all of my different layers. I'm going to right click on that geodatabase in the catalog pane. And if you notice, there's an option for new feature class. So we keep, oh, go ahead, Josh.
Real quick, if you did not copy this data to your student folder on the N drive and you're working directly from the classes folder, don't add a feature class to the database. Make a shapefile in your student folder.
Yeah, good point. Yeah, if you didn't copy it, this will be read-only and it won't let you actually do it. We don't necessarily need to use these data again, so if you can't find it again, it's not the end of the world. That's okay. If I look at what I have the folder that got created when I made my map. So you could just create it in there as well.
I lost my catalog tab.
Yep.
Can I open it again?
Yep, so you can do that from the view menu. tab, keep calling out the wrong thing. The view tab, and then right here, catalog pane will bring that back. All right, so step one, find the location that you have read-write access to create the new layer in. And maybe I will just make mine in the folder. I'm going to do it in the project folder that got made when I made this ArcGIS Pro project. So I'm going to right click and I'm going to do new shapefile. So all of these layers that have the little gray icons, those are layers in a geodatabase, which is like a special container for spatial data. A shapefile is another file format for spatial data layers, and shapefiles get stored in folders, and the other ones in the geodatabase are stored in the geodatabase. So it's different locations have different names for the file format stored in them. So right click on that folder. I chose new shapefile. And now it's thinking. It's thinking really hard. Eventually it'll come out. There it goes. Okay. So now I'm going to create this new shapefile. It already gives me the location that I clicked on, so it knows where it's going to go. And I said we have to give it four pieces of information. So where is it going to go? That doesn't count as one. The first one is the name. What do we want to call this? I'm going to do trailheads because I think it'll actually be easier. So I'm going to make a new layer called trailheads. When you make a new layer name, a couple of important things. You cannot have any spaces in the name. I couldn't do like RMNP space trailheads. It would not let me do that. So you can use an underscore. Yeah, you can use an underscore, but you can't use a space or a dash. So no funny characters. Then the next question, the second piece of information is, do you want it to be a point, line, or polygon? So for trailheads, you could do either. I'm going to do polygon actually, just to make it a little more interesting to demo. Because when you make a point, you click once and you're done. But a polygon, you have to click a few times. And then coordinate system. So the coordinate system that the coordinates will be stored in, and I'm going to make mine the same as my streams layer. You can make it be the same as another layer, and then you know it's going to be consistent. So I made it the same as another layer, and it's UTM. It's that coordinate system called UTM. If you leave it, oh, go ahead.
Can I ask a question?
Sure.
So I am still, I right-clicked on the GDB, the geodatabase. So I'm creating.
It's a little different.
Yeah, so I'm creating the feature class, and you know the naming and everything is fine, and I made it a polygon, but it asks one of two geometric properties, M values or Z values. Is that what you're referring to right now?
No, so now I'm doing it the way you have it. So I'm gonna help you out here. So trailheads, polygon. If you see something for M values and Z values, you don't have to worry about that. That's something very different. So that's not actually the coordinate system.
Okay.
So you can just leave those as is. You don't have to worry about that. Hold on, I'm trying to dock it there. So you can skip that, just leave it as the default. So if you're doing it in the geodatabase, you'll get more of a wizard where you fill out one panel and you hit next. Then it's going to ask you about the fields. So what fields do you want in your table? What information do you want about each trailhead? So anytime you create new data, no matter what the data is or what it's showing, you need to think about what attributes do you want in the table? What pieces of information is someone going to want from this data? So for trailheads, what might you want? Any ideas? maybe the
Like
trail.
the trail or something?
Yeah, the name of the trail. And so for every piece of information, you're going to make that into its own field, which will become a column in the table. And then each attribute can hold a different type of object. So if you had trail name, that would be text. What if you had like the starting elevation for each trailhead? Would that be text, or would it be something else, maybe? Like a number. So that might be a short integer. Integers are whole numbers, float and double can have decimal places. And short integer versus long integer, the difference there is short integer can hold anything up to 32,000. And I'm pretty sure we don't have anything that high in Colorado. So I think short integer is probably going to be okay. So when you create your new feature class, you have to give it a name and tell it what geometry type, tell it what fields you want in the table and how those fields should be stored. And then if you're doing it in the geodatabase, your last panel will be the coordinate system. So on that first panel with the M and Z values, don't worry about that. But then you can make it the same as another layer. I can make it the same as my streams layer. And then I know that the coordinates will line up. There. And so it's showing me right here that it's in this coordinate system called UTM. Then if you hit next, you get more things that you can ignore. So just ignore that. And the last one, you can ignore that. And then the actual last one, you can ignore that and then hit finish. If you do the shapefile one, you get everything you need to fill out in one panel. And if you do the geodatabase one, it's a little bit different. You get these panels where you hit next. But now I have a layer, a new empty layer called trailheads that is ready and waiting for me to edit some features into. So
Can I ask a quick question?
sure.
So for, I'm still in the like creating a new shape file panel. So after we choose the coordinate system, do we hit run to create the?
Yep. So you're in a window like this and you gave it a name, whatever, I can't type. And then you'll give it a coordinate system and then you'll hit run at the end, at the bottom, and that will actually create that feature class.
Okay.
And after it creates the feature class, then you will see your new shapefile show up in the folder.
Okay.
Is there a way to add those attributes in creating a shapefile too, or just the other way?
Yeah, you know, I thought that it was in here, but it's not. So they can be created, they just have to be done after the fact. So let me make it so I can show you. I'm going to call mine trailheads 2. And I'm going to set my coordinate system. And I'm going to hit run. Okay. So trailheads 2 is now the shapefile. So it's the new empty layer in this format called a shapefile that did not let me make the fields ahead of time, but it shows up in my contents. So we know how to open up the table. We can right click and go to attribute table. And now I see the table. It looks very empty because it's a new empty feature class. There's no features in it yet. There's no polygons in it yet. And there's also no fields. So if you're in here and then you know that you need to make a new field, see up here, there's a little button called add at the top of the little table window. So you can hit add. And then it's going to be the same thing. So if you know what type of information you want to be in the table, you have to give the field a name and a type. So we can use the same ones that we had before. So it was trail name, which was text. So I'm just clicking in the little cell trail name and then drop down list to get to text. And then way on the right, if you know that you don't need that many characters, you can make the length shorter, but I'm not gonna. And then if we wanted to do starting elevation, just click on the bottom and then click in the field name, type it in. And then again, drop down. I'm going to make it a short integer, so a whole number. Oh, you know what? It's too long. Okay. My field name starting elevation was too long. It was showing up in red. So if you hover your mouse over it, it'll say field name length is not within the allowed range. That means your name is too long. Make it shorter. And so then it's fixed. So we made our shapefile. We right-clicked to open that table. We clicked the little add button, which opened up this window. We added our new fields, and now the last thing that's very important and hard to find is up at the top, save. You want to save the changes to the table in order to actually create those fields. Otherwise, they don't get made, which is kind of annoying. So now it actually made the fields. If I go back to the table, which is just the other tab here, then I can see my two new fields in the table. All right, I'm going to shrink that because it's taking over my whole screen. If you hover your mouse in just the right place, you can move that line up and down. Now what we're going to do is actually add some trailheads. So let's go in. We're going to need to add the trails. That would help. So I'm going to click and hold and add in the trails because I hadn't added them yet. And now I can take a look at the map. And I can zoom into an area. So again, we're following these steps on the slide. So we filled out the panel and we created our new feature. Now we're going to do steps 3 and 4. So zoom into an area that you want to create a feature in, and then we'll do the editing. Where's the trailhead? Here. So I'm zooming into around Bear Lake, right here. So I'm just going to zoom in around Bear Lake. And I have the satellite image underneath so I can see it. And I can see the trailhead is right here. And that is a very full parking lot. So now you have to decide, well, how do I want to make my trailhead? Is the trailhead the whole parking lot? Is the trailhead this little dirt area by the kiosk? Should it be a point? Is it just going to be the dot at the end of the trail? These are decisions that you have to make depending on how you want your data. For now, I'm just going to do the whole parking lot, and I'm going to show you how to make a polygon. So now we're going to make the parking lot, but imagine all the different types of data that you might work with for your research, conservation areas or boundaries of some sort. So the steps will be the same for all of that. All right, so to edit, we are going to go in ArcGIS Pro to the top, all of our tabs up here. We're going to go to the Edit tab. And what we want to do is create a new feature. So under the Edit tab, we have all these different buttons, and there's one kind of in the middle called Create. So right here. When we hit Create, we get a new window that pops up on the right. And I'm going to dock it. I'm going to click and hold and dock it right here so it shows up. Darn it. No, hold on. I'm going to click and hold, and I'm going to actually bring it down to my tabs here. I don't know why mine are not docking right. Now it's docked. And notice that I can see a list of layers. These are layers that I might want to edit. It happens to be that I want to edit this one right here. So after the layer's in there, you hit Create, you go over to the right, and you click on the layer that you want to edit. So I'm going to click, and now I get kind of like a little menu that pops up for how I want to create my features. There's a whole lot of different editing options here. We're not going to look at most of them. We're going to look at one, this one right here, the one on the very left. Basic, simple, create a polygon feature. So click on that little polygon button on the very left. And I should ask, is everyone seeing this? Is anyone not seeing layers, the layer that they want in here? Every now and then you'll get that where the layer that you want to edit doesn't show up in the list.
I got an error message when I tried to create my feature class in both ways, the shapefile and the other method. But so
what do you know what folder you were trying to create it in? Was it in your workspace folder, or was it in like
it was in the
classes?
CLTL workshop folder.
Yeah, that's because that folder where the data is coming from is read only. You know what you can do? I'll show you real quick. If you see, just go to like regular Windows Explorer, and then go to, and I'm going to show you in the chat. Go to regular Windows Explorer and go to N-Classes Workspace. Go to that location and make yourself a folder in there, and that's where you can create stuff.
Okay, I'll try that.
Okay. All right. Is anyone else having trouble seeing things, or they're not seeing the right things?
I think I just got behind at one point.
Okay, no problem.
I created my shapefile, and so like on my contents tab with all my layers,
Yep.
I have my layer that says trailheads, but now how do I get to the tab that you have on your right, on the right side of your screen? Or I guess you're just in your catalog now.
So what you want to do is go up to the top where you have all the tabs up top and click edit.
Okay.
And then click create.
Okay.
And that should give you a new window on the right.
Yeah, and I have trailheads there.
Okay, so then when you click trailheads, it should give you all the little buttons that I'm seeing here on my screen. And you just want the one on the left, the top left.
Okay, just the polygon.
Yep, simple polygon.
Okay, thank you.
Okay. So once you get to see that created polygon feature, then you click on it. And then you'll notice a change. When you go to your map, you're going to have a little crosshair. And so when you're creating new features, the way it works is you click on the map, and every time you click, it creates a vertex in the feature. So if you're creating a line or a polygon, every time you click, it'll make a link in that chain to make the line or the area. If you happen to have a point layer, then you click once, and that's it. That's the whole feature, because a point is only one XY coordinate pair. So points are not really very exciting to digitize. Polygons are a little bit more fun. So I'm going to just start right here, and I'm going to click to create a vertex. And now it wants me to make the next vertex, and you just click. And as you begin clicking, it's going to start making the shape of that polygon. So I'm going to just go around the parking lot, and every time I click, it'll make a vertex. The frequency that you click obviously will make your polygon have more or less detail. So if you, I'm going to zoom in right now. I'm going to use my scroll wheel. I'm going to zoom in a whole lot. If I did it like this, that would be a whole lot of detail, like way more detail than I would need. But I also wouldn't want to end it here because I have a giant straight section. So you do want to have a little bit of curve. When you're done, then you double click. And now I have a feature. I'm going to use my scroll wheel again to scroll out. I can also use the Z key, the X key, and the C key. Like literally just push C on your keyboard and you'll get the pan tool back. And now I can pan while I'm holding C on my keyboard. Takes a little practice, but then I can kind of move around while I'm editing. Z will allow me to just click and scroll in and out.
Can you repeat that again? I'm sorry.
Yeah, that's okay. Okay, so if you are not zoomed to the right place, there are some shortcuts on the keyboard. So you can hit, just like hold down the Z button on your keyboard and then move your mouse. Sorry, there's a lot of buttons. Hold down Z on your keyboard and then click with your mouse while you move your mouse like back and forth. And that will zoom in and out. Now I've let go of everything. Now I'm going to hold down C, like literally just press the C key on my keyboard. Hello, there it goes. Now I have my pan tool back. Now I can click with my mouse and pan the map. So Z, holding down Z will let you zoom, holding down C will let you pan. And this is kind of neat because when you're in editing mode, if you're in editing mode and you need to move around, whoops, now my computer is being very slow. If you're in editing mode and you need to move around, you don't want to have to stop a feature in the middle of editing it to go to the pan tool. So it lets you stay within your editing mode, but then still be able to move around. So like right now, I'm in the middle of a feature, but I need to go up to the right. So I can pan and then keep digitizing. And then pan and then keep digitizing. You know what we haven't done yet? We haven't saved. That's fascinating. I forgot save. So I'm going to hit save right here. If you have your edit tab open, you'll see a save, and this save is for your edits. So the changes I've made to the features I just digitized. And yes, I want to save all edits. Notice up at the top, there's another save way up here. And that's actually to save the whole project. You want to do that. You want to do that early. You want to do that often. Because if ArcGIS Pro crashes, or if Remote Desktop decides to just like, die for a second, then you'll be able to bring back the project to where you left off.
And you should know, saving your project does not save your edits.
Yeah, they're separate. It's kind of a weird thing. So the save on the edit tab will only save changes to the layer that you've edited. And then the save for the project will only save the project, and they don't save each other.
Can you show where the save was for the editing again?
Yeah. Okay, so it's up here. It's on the edit tab.
Okay.
And then if you have edits to be saved, then the button will be lit up and in color. But once you hit save and say yes, then the button goes gray because there's nothing to save right now. All right, so we're going to take a little break and have the opportunity to do some more digitizing. Here's a really good lesson. I made a feature that I don't want. Notice how it's highlighted with a bright blue outline. That means it's selected, and I don't want it. So with it selected, I can hit delete up here on my edit, the big red X on the edit tab, and I can get rid of it. Now it's gone. So let's do this. Let's play around with digitizing a little bit more and make a few more trailheads. So just find some parking lots by the trails layer and make a few more trailheads on your own maps. Play around with the tools a little bit. If you want to, try going back and modifying it. If you have a feature that's selected, notice that we have some tools up here for editing vertices and modifying shapes. So play around with that, and we'll take a little break. So let's meet back up at 3 o'clock. So you can stay logged in and everything, but let's meet back here at 3 o'clock and we'll move on to searching for data. And if you have any questions about digitizing, I can answer them then. Any questions right now?
I have a quick one. How do you stop, like when you're making the different vertices, how do you stop creating the polygon when you're finished?
Yeah, you have to double click to end the feature that you're in the middle of.
Okay.
So here I'm kind of in the middle and I want to be done. You can go back to your last vertex and double click, F2. If you hit F2 on your keyboard, that's another way to make that happen.
That's how I usually do it because I'm terrible at double clicking a lot of times, and it'll make me add extra vertices.
Yeah, if you kind of forget where you are and you're way over here and you double click, it'll do that on you and you don't want that. But yeah,
Okay, thanks.
F2. And I'm going to Control Z that, and I'm going to Control Z that, and I'm going to hit Control Z again, and I'm going to get rid of those ugly ones because I don't want them. All right, so yeah, practice digitizing, take a break. We'll see you at 3 o'clock.